Anna,
So
over to you.
I wanted to let everybody know that we are recording. So just FYI, thank you so much for joining us for our COI meeting. We're really excited today. We have an awesome panel that John is going to introduce. We're going to talk about bridging the technical talent into the government, bringing some non-traditional hires into the workforce. And I think that there's going to be some really great insights that are going to be shared today. So we encourage you to be active in the chat. If you've got questions, comments throughout, please put them into the chat and we'll make sure that those get incorporated into the presentation. From a COI perspective, we just have one quick announcement at the top. So Anil Chaudhry is on the phone from our Emerging Technology COI. And Anil, could you just in maybe 1 minute give everybody an overview of the really cool work that you all are doing on the National Use Case and Solutions Library?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for affording us this opportunity to talk about all the wonderful work that our volunteers in the emerging tech community of interest are doing. Long story short, we have had, excuse me, an initiative called the National Use Case and Solutions Library, which is this idea that agencies shouldn't have to duplicate market research or similar efforts on when they need to find appropriate solutions to their problems. They should be able to go to a location, site, tool, and do some quick research to see if somebody else in government has already worked on their problem or a parametrically similar problem. So that, in essence, is a National Use Case and Solutions Library. It's something that we are hoping that will get some traction to everybody we have spoken to agrees that it's a good idea. So we're working off that momentum. We have a lot of industry support. We have a lot of government support. We're putting the pieces together. So if you are interested in it, we just have a draft paper yet. It hasn't been, it's pre-publication. You're more than welcome to look at it. Jackie on our team, the industry co-chair for this initiative, will be happy to share. So that's in essence what we're doing. And we hope that your team will also join us and maybe contribute and provide some insights into issues that we may have not thought about while we were developing the NUSL. And over to you, Jackie, in case I missed something, which I'm sure I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Yes, I will put my email in the chat for everyone if you are interested in reading more about the white paper. I've also dropped a link for the meeting we're having to cover the NUSL in more detail. And so during that meeting, Neil will talk through the white paper in more detail. And we'll also hear from a variety of organizations, including startups, small businesses, medium-sized organizations, large businesses, and government organizations who have submitted use cases to the NUSL, covering different emerging technologies. It's really a diverse set of technologies. So we're hoping we can have folks engage, and we're also looking for pilot users. So if you have feedback on the platform, we'd love to hear your feedback. And hopefully we'll see you at the meeting on 2/22. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John or Marlena. I'm not sure. John, right? Yes. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to John, who is our programs chair and moderator for today's panel.
Hey, good morning or good noonish to everybody, depending on your time zone. So my name is John. I'll start off with some quick housekeeping things first. So remember to mute your microphone if you're not already muted, but most people, I see people are, that's good. We are going to be going through a whole stack of questions, but this is a discussion. This is not a one-way monologue type event. So if you have questions or thoughts, start off by sticking them in the chat. At least then Terry, who's here, and Brianna, who's here, can track those and try and like bunch related questions together so we can try and make it into something that actually flows in a cohesive way. Let's see how it goes. And that should be it. Let's see what happens. Now onto our panelists, and everyone's going to show up in different places on your screen. So I'm doing this alphabetically. So Caitlin, who's here somewhere, is the co-founder of the US Digital Corps. This very new initiative was started in August of last year, 2021. It's inside the GSA, and this creates a 2-year fellowship program as a way to bring very highly skilled, mission-driven early career techies into federal government service to work on impact and innovative projects. So, and prior to this, Caitlin held a bunch of, actually quite a few leadership roles at Teach for America, which I was impressed to read about. So next up with Jennifer Anastasoff. She's the executive director of the Tech Talent Project. This is a nonpartisan, nonprofit project that's focused on increasing the ability of the US government to recruit modern technical leaders in order to achieve critical economic policy and human outcomes. Prior to this, Jennifer is a serial entrepreneur who has co-founded multiple organizations, including my personal favorites, Fuse Corps and the US Digital Service. So that's her. And Raquel is the CTO of Threadloom. That's a data engine and content discovery platform for interest-based online communities. Prior to this, Raquel was engineering lead at the US Digital Service, which is where she and I met. And she also spent a decade as an engineer at Google and also has degrees from both Harvard and MIT, including a PhD. Really. And I'm the moderator for today. My name is John Odin. I'm a senior strategist at CivicActions. That's a digital services firm that helps the government deliver better public services through modern technology and design. Founded in 2004, it's a fully distributed company that has never had an office. Topical these days. Prior to this, I wrote a book called Distributed Teams, which is now in its 2nd edition as of last year. I've helped with a bunch of telework and remote policy issues in multiple jurisdictions inside and outside the United States. I've also been an engineer at the US Digital Service, which is how I know Jennifer and Raquel, as well as Code for America, Oracle, and Mozilla. So, and I'll be the moderator, so I'll be doing the least of the talking here. So here we go. First question, Biden administration, it's made a clear point about modernizing government as a top priority. So that's including appointing tech-savvy leaders at a bunch of agencies. But to actually execute, it's going to need a bunch of technologists. So the first opening question would be, how? What do you see as some of the biggest, most immediate hurdles to attracting that talent and bringing them in? And it's an open question. So we talked about we're not bouncing all in the same line. So who wants to jump in first? Caitlin, do you want to start? And then everyone else can jump in on top of you. And
I'm happy to. Yeah, this is what we've been doing for the past few months. So we are in the middle of our first year. As John mentioned, we are doing our first recruiting class. We are actually in the hiring process right now. And I will say, both personally and for our fellows, I was new to government this year. This is the first time I've ever worked in the federal space. I was in the nonprofit area beforehand. And so I think this first thing that I'm going to say is true for both the people we're recruiting, but also generally for talent, is that there's a little bit of a lack of visibility about what happens inside government, what the opportunities are, the difference you can make. And there's also a place where there's a question I think that we're running into with our fellows around, can you see yourself? So it's visibility of opportunity, but also visibility of people that look like you, that have experiences like you. Will I fit in this space, even if I know where those opportunities are? And so I think that visibility piece is currently a low-hanging fruit, frankly, one that we've been able to fix a little bit with website, social media presence for our particular talent profile, but it's one big piece. And then I think there is an opportunity for us to continue to think more about talent and prospective talent as our user when we're designing both what our jobs are, but also how we steward talent inside government. So what do they need to actually enter service? Is it a financial thing? Is it career stability? Is it growth and learning and development over time? So as a user, what are we thinking about? How are we designing our opportunities and the support for talent inside government so that we can share that and they can be interested once those opportunities are available to them or visible to them, I guess.
And I jump in just at the other end of the spectrum. So Caitlin's working on bringing in folks who are early career, and that's so exciting and so critical. In addition, I think what the Tech Talent Project does is looks at bringing in and supporting in government technologists that are technologists that are, thinking in a modern way, that are ready, willing, and able to push towards outcomes, all of those things. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen, I'll say one of the good things. One of the good things is that the administration had focused immediately upon entering on bringing in and appointing tech leadership, as John had said. This is not something that has been consistent. I know there was some great work that was done a few presidencies ago as well. But, this is the first time really that at this level, we've been able to bring in and appoint technical leadership. And that's great. But it's also, as many on this call know, it's not enough. Like the vast majority of technical leadership in the federal government is not appointed. Nor should it be necessarily, right? And the key challenge, one of the key challenges that I have seen has been particularly over the past year, as we look at, for example, SES positions, SES, and Jason, this is for you, SES positions that are, that for technology, it's exceedingly hard to get through the process based on technical skill, whether you're inside or outside the government. And so that is a challenge and something that I think we need to really look at and that any administration would face. Also the support, and Jason hit at this quickly in the chat, but the support and the really focusing on and identifying management, leadership, and active hiring as critical parts of building a senior level talent pipeline that can coach and support, by the way, the folks that Caitlin's bringing in, right? It can't just be one at a time. We need to be in parallel bringing folks in. And Raquel, actually, I would say one of the things that I've repeatedly been trying to recruit her back over time, into Gov, not putting her on the spot here, but
no pressure right now.
No pressure right now. But part of it is because they're, it's so critical to have folks who are leaders who empower others. So I'm just going to kick it over to you with that.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I loved my stint. So just a little bit, I was, in the industry for a while, went and did GovTech for a little bit with US Digital Service. Loved it. I'm always thinking in some point in my career, I need to go back because the experience was just very transformational. And so whenever I think about recruiting, whether it's, Caitlin looking at newer grads and talked a lot with Jennifer around Tech Talent Project and more senior folks, I think about what brought me in the first place. And I feel like at the beginning, there was just something made me curious. Whether it was a talk I heard, for me, I heard Jen Paca talk and just kind of voice like, we need you. And it's really nice to be needed in something that you realize I have unique skills to contribute. I mean, it feels good. You worked so hard to get these skills. Oh, they could do something really valuable for lots of other people who didn't have the advantage that I have of getting this education. So that pulled me. But then there's a second part, kind of to what Caitlin said, where I feel like there's this milling, just kind of like, who else might be doing this weird thing that most people don't do who have my degree, or most people don't do who had my early career path. And as you start to meet those people, you're like, I admire and respect that person. Oh, I like that person. Oh, that person's vision of why they're doing this and what they're going to learn from it. It's like sense of confirmation, like, hey, this is viable. This isn't like, I don't have to, everyone in my life doesn't have to understand why I'm taking this leap, because I'm starting to believe in it from the stories I hear. And then I think when you get there, then you kind of see the possibilities of, what this interdisciplinary work can be from between technology and government.
I do think this is also tying back, as you said, to what Caitlin said, is that even just knowing that there's a need for something like your skills and your abilities. Hey, did you know that you could help fix this? Like just that sentence is something that's what dragged me in too, like Raquel said, and I've heard it from multiple others. They just didn't even know it was an option or it was even a need. So anyway, yes to what Caitlin's doing there. Keep going. Candidates. maybe not everyone is good for this. We just talked about making it appealing, make sure people know that they can help. But are there ideal, like we've seen people who don't fit the profile well, or who might, but actually can't work in this environment? Or is there such a thing as a skill set or an attributes that you do look for, or red flags to not look for, and, obviously it varies on the position and the human, and, there's a lot of details, but are there some sort of generalist kind of trends to look for?
I mean, when I think about the people who when I look at the differences between the folks that I've worked with that should probably stay in tech, like that is where they belong, and those that I'm like, oh my gosh, you would love this. You should, if you can ever give it a try, you should. Just really, I guess for me, as with a technical background, there are a lot of engineers who really don't, they may be excellent engineers, they may be brilliant, they may be building really powerful things, but they don't really want to think about the messy, complex, multiple stakeholders and uncertainty and unclear roadmap. They're like, I'm happiest when I know what needs to be done and I can go for it. And they may be very advanced and sophisticated in their technical abilities, and you want them somewhere in the picture. So maybe they would be great to have as a contractor somewhere. But for me, the people who I see more as coming and being successful in government are the ones who are always curious about the rest of it. Like, yeah, I like doing this, my skill set, but I'm curious about why are we making the decision, the strategy, the reasons, the motivation, the complexities. And I feel like that curiosity is a pretty valuable asset in both helpful to the agency hiring, but that person's going to enjoy it more if that's something that they crave. And if they don't crave that, it might annoy them and it might not be a good fit.
That's actually where I was going to go to. I think we talk a lot about being mission aligned or mission oriented as an important factor in someone that's coming into government. And I think it's actually mission driven. It's like, it's going to get hard. When it gets hard, why are you doing this? Like, how do you reground yourself and how do you push through, and how do you use like your reason for being here as the fuel to get through whatever the thing is that you're facing at that time? And when you don't have that, it is hard to be successful, particularly in spaces where you are creating something new, you are making change, you're sometimes ruffling feathers that you don't mean to. Like, how do you remain resilient, aligned in what you are trying to do, and able to push through? And I really think that evaluating for mission alignment, but also mission fueling, I don't know, there's a better word for that, but is critical when we're thinking about bringing folks into government.
Yep, it is. I also think if it's something that you deeply personally care about, then you'll weather whatever storm of the day you just bumped into by accident. If it's something you just pushing buttons on because you're like, yeah, then, when things go sideways, you can be tempted to just give up and walk away. But if this is part of your soul, then you'll keep at it. I think, and there's plenty of jobs like that in government. It's just a question of finding the human that matches with that drive to that job.
Totally. I'm going to agree, but I'm going to fight with you a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's going to make it fun.
And that's never happened before. So.
But which is, Brian hit it at an empathy piece in the chat. And I think, right, I have seen a lot of people, if people can come in with all the mission, and it is important that folks have the mission, but with all the mission focus and all the vision, and they don't have any, they don't have any curiosity, to Raquel's point, about humans or about people and systems as challenges to engage with. If folks aren't coming in thinking about and respecting people who have significant experience that is different from them, then they're just not going to be successful. And even if they can move through for a while, like maybe they need to be hanging out and doing that thing that Raquel was talking about.
Yeah.
But it is critical in the same way that I think it's critical for folks who are on the program side to really respect and understand the value that folks who have technical expertise can bring to their delivery. But that's like just that core of respect is key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that when the first time I thought of this question, just the first word that always comes to my mind is humility, because, and I pair that with like someone, of course you want competence, you want someone who's like confident and knows what they're doing, but that plus humility is so powerful because usually it's not always the case that you have both of those together.
Yeah. Curiosity with the other, like, why is something like this? There might be a good reason, you just don't know that. And why are people doing this other thing? Oh, that's because this other important thing. It's actually competent people working on things. You just don't know the layers involved. It's complicated. In terms of opportunities, we have a lot in the press these days about the great resignation, people leaving their jobs for various reasons. Is that creating an opportunity here? Is this something that we could work with as a way to encourage people? If you're trying to think about what do you want to do in life, is this a time to talk to them?
Yes.
Lies on it. Yeah, I think anytime you can catch people wanting to question why they're going like the straight and narrow path, it's a good thing. And obviously the last few years have given people reason to, I'm going to defer this and I'm going to do something completely unexpected for a year, and realizing my life didn't completely get derailed. I mean, I know for some people it did, but for others, you can come and go between traditional paths. And I call this a slightly non-traditional path for technologists. So I think it's been helpful for people to see that there are options.
I just have to share, there was the United States Digital Service put out not an ad, a LinkedIn something the other day that said, the great resignation, looking at quitting your job, come here, quit your job, come here. Which I think,
that one. Quit your job, period. It was like
there we go, just quit your job and join us, which I think, a lot of times when I was at the digital service, folks would say, oh, but you're like the digital service. And so people will like, that's special. That's, it's not like people, that's sugar. People look at government and they say, they don't look at government as the digital service and 18F or this agency or the federal government and the state government. They say, I want to make a difference. Where do I do that? And so I actually think it's a huge opportunity for everyone in government. We just have to work on some of those things to make it easier. Like if someone actually applied for a gig, they need to be able to, and they're qualified, they need to be able to talk to someone. That I find is difficult in the current process, unless you're in a fellowship or something like that.
Agreed. It is so opaque if you don't have somebody, someone who can. I have a colleague from Google who I had worked with for a while, and he reached out to me because he was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to do something like this. And wow, there's so many exchanges between us. As at each stage, he would be like, okay, so this GSA, do I really have to show this and this? And then I would chat my USDS community and be like, is this for real? And like, yes, it's for real, just do it. And I explained, but he was already bought in, yet still for him being bought in, it was still such an uphill battle for him to figure out how to get into the system. Talented engineer, by the way, and very like all these qualities we talked about, had them. And it was hard.
Right. Yes, flashbacks. For me too. When we were met
John,
yesterday. Sorry, yeah. Who was that?
I was going to ask if you want me to. We've got a few questions coming in.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So I know one that Jennifer kind of touched on from Jason Briefel. He was asking. He said, so we are successful getting folks to join the government. Are our managers and leaders prepared and being developed to support retention and continued success amidst changing norms and expectations for your work? Just want to see if anyone else wanted to share some thoughts on that.
No.
Oh, go ahead. Okay. I can speak from the GSA side. I'm new to GSA and TTS. I joined in June. TTS is Technology Transformation Services inside TSA. I assume everyone else knows it now, but I'll say it anyway. I have noticed a real orientation toward growth and development for not just supervisors, but all staff within TTS, focused on creating a great experience, a great community, and ensuring that there is intentional growth and development offered to all federal employees that are in that space. And that's something that we're also trying to mirror within Digital Core, knowing like very specifically, we're looking at people who may be in their first job, their first technology job, definitely. Trying to provide that additional set of learning and development experiences that are holistic. It's both about your skill track, but it's also about being new to government. It's also about being new to the professional space. And so how do you work through that? How do you grow in the ways that you need to be successful? And how do you build networks? How do you understand yourself in relation to others and how you operate at work and all sorts of things? So I really believe and see every day at work how we are thinking about the whole individual when they come to work in a way that I don't know if that is different or not, but that has been my entire experience so far at GSA and within TTS.
So awesome.
Very cool.
Well, and I would just toss in, and I think that there's such a need, and I think a desire, a strong desire for really effective and impactful trainings and supports for folks inside to be able to get that knowledge, both about, sort of whole person management, which is the general thing, and figuring out how to manage effectively across communities, et cetera, and being really thoughtful and intentional. But also when it comes explicitly to technology and when it comes to thinking about technology and innovation, I think there's a real place in our trainings and our supports of civil servants to just dive in and provide that so folks can grow and learn in ways that are going to help them really succeed and thrive in their role.
Yeah, I also think just it's hard to have a conversation like this without talking about COVID. It's all of the things we've just been talking about so far, plus, by the way, everyone's suddenly forced to deal with a very different work environment. So there's a whole bunch of how do you know what people are doing? How do you know what people are doing when they're not in an office, when you can't see them? There's an extra layer of complexity in all this. And that's, by the way, not just a government problem, that's a everybody problem. And just kind of knowing that that's the reality for just about everybody. Anyway, we talked about describing, hang on, I'll actually, if I can, because it just popped by me and I was about to ask, can I take Brian Whitaker just asked a question about how do we bridge the career ladder gap? So there's entry level digital core, and then there's executive SME, USDS, 18F, OPM lab. What about the middle? Like that's at two ends, and thoughts or comments on that? And I don't know if that's a fair question to ask, but.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for your question. I can start on the digital core side. For us, at least, we're starting at GS9, but we have actually built a career ladder into our 2-year program. And so we're hiring at the GS9 level after a full year, and we're also hiring using Pathways as our hiring authority. And so we're hiring into the accepted service in the first year. And then in the second year, we are promoting to GS11 and converting them to career service. And so then at the completion of the second year, and we're providing that learning and development along the way, so we're sure that they'll be able to meet those performance levels for the different, for the next level up. But then at the conclusion of our fellowship, they are career employees, and we then promote them one last time to GS12 before placing them permanently at the location that they have been placed in for the past 2 years as part of the fellowship. And so we are bringing them in, and we are starting to grow their career and moving them toward mid-level, where we sort of are handing them off to agencies to continue to shepherd their experience longer term. I don't know if someone else wants to talk about where that picks up on the other side.
I'm happy to talk about it. I also just dropped it into the chat, which is basically, I think there's a great program, SNEQA, unfortunate name, great program. Subject matter expertise qualifications assessment, where they're actually building shared certs and having folks do essentially having the subject matter expertise reviews happen centrally, so that once folks are reviewed and they're on a shared cert, anyone who's on this call who is in the federal government who is hiring, who needs a product person, or I think these are the ones, I'm not sure they've done product yet, customer experience or data, et cetera, that you can just interview them, and if you like them, you can hire them. It's exciting. I'm sure there's a little bit more paperwork in there, but not too much actually. So I think that's a great option, because they're looking at mid-career explicitly. So that's been just an exciting thing to see.
Very cool. I'm trying to think that I'm just trying to read through all the text to see if there's anything, and I can't actually read all the text at the same time.
I would say Julie had a really good one at the beginning.
All right. Where did I come from?
Let me
Julie.
read it. Oh, Julie, go ahead. I see it. I see it there.
Hey,
Where-
Julie.
Hey, Julie.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good to see you again.
Did I
Go
have
for it.
Yeah, I have no idea what my question was earlier. I'm just
Oh,
making
sorry.
snarky comments and like, yeah, cheerlead everybody. You're all right. This is great. But you know, I'm happy to say some things if you'd like. I was just at OPM for the last year before coming back into the private sector, and everything that you're saying about these possibilities for pathways and the change in approach for upskilling existing career civil servants, it is all happening. Caitlin can confirm that when I chatted with her when she was starting the digital core, I was like, oh my God, Caitlin, it's going to be so hard to provide that management support for folks, because we can't just drop in new people, right? And expect everybody to be happy and shiny. There's like a huge gap. But the fact that there is such a focus on that now makes me feel just so happy and bullish on all of that. And I hope that your continued success will beat my own cynicism out of me, and we all continue to flourish. Go Civic Tech.
And actually, I did see before, thank you, another comment you asked about the degree requirement. I think that's a good point. It's a preference, but it's not a requirement. And that's an important distinction. So,
Yeah. Preferences.
Yeah, there was a question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. The question, there was one that was talking about, you know, a plan of action to change the narrative around acceptable degree requirements. So, you know, your thoughts on like, you know, experience versus a specific degree. So if you guys want to react to that.
I could not to, you know, hijack your actual panel, but I can tell you exactly how it worked at OPM. I was writing a digital service expert GS 14 position and said to my HR business partner, I don't want any education requirements. And they said, okay. And then we didn't put them in. And that was fine. That was it. There's no rule. So
there.
There you go. It really, like everything with hiring, right? It matters on your HR business partner in your agency and what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. But there's no actual statute that says you have to have these requirements, you have to do this, you have to do that, and then you have to, you know, meet those requirements and check them off before you get onto the cert list. It is not that stringent. So boot camp grads have a role here in the federal government if we'll just let them in.
And I take, if I can, I just noticed Angela Ann posted a question here about people basically leaving government to go to the private sector because of salary and benefits. I'm paraphrasing a much longer text, and how that's a problem for recruiting and retention. And we actually, one of the things we wanted to talk about was actually about value proposition of the job, like total compensation and what thoughts. Like, you know,
say what you said when we were chatting, and
yeah,
I
you're
loved
on
it.
the spot,
Talk about
Caitlin.
it a bit more.
My recall isn't that strong, you all. So I'm just gonna start talking about my favorite topic. I think, well, on the salary question directly, to the broader question that John is asking, it is a big thing. It is something that people talk about, they ask about first. They want to know, am I able to accept a job? And I think it is a responsibility that we have to be minimally competitive with other likely options, because when we're not, people that don't have financial privilege, that don't have other kinds of privilege and opportunities, aren't able to accept these jobs. And we need all talent to have these opportunities be accessible to them. And so I think I'm so glad that OPM and the Chico Council and everyone is looking at salary and compensation, because it is a really critical conversation to be having. And on the digital core side, we had to solve for it by, or not had to, but we utilized a few different things that are available. We're using the career ladder so that salary is growing. We also have, with great support from inside GSA, layered on a recruitment incentive on top of our salary. So we are getting to that minimum threshold for all of our fellows in that first year, which is really helpful in getting them in the door. But I think it is really, the salary piece for us is about being minimally competitive. Everything else is the true value proposition of the work that you're doing. It's like, what are you able to do? And what you are doing directly helps people. And so connecting that through line so people understand that direct impact, providing the opportunity to grow and learn. I think that's something that industry does really well when they present job opportunities. It's something that we have all the levers for here, but we don't often actually talk about them. And so how can we present that? You can start your career here and you can build one if you want, and the levers are here, and this is what this would look like. Or alternatively, I think maybe this is what we were talking a little bit about yesterday. That's a pretty traditional career path building. People don't always want to build a traditional career path. They may be re-entering the workforce, they may be reskilling, they may just have different responsibilities right now, and they want something to look different for them. And I think what's really great about the federal government is that we have different types of opportunities like that. We have tour of duty models or term limited positions if people want to come in and do something in a certain way. Or like Digital Core is trying to build careers because you're early in them. But those are just choices and opportunities. And there are lots of different configurations. But I don't know that others that are outside government realize that there are even different types of job structures available that could suit their needs.
I would add, and also there's noise, there will be noise, and I apologize. I think that all makes sense, and I agree with that. I would add just another lens, though. A key thing that we actually have control over, I say we as though I were still in government, but I feel it, but that we have control over is the candidate experience. So when I think about Anne's question, and actually it's Angela, Anya, or on probably, but Angela's question, when I think about Angela's question, I actually think, when I think about recruiting and active recruiting in the private sector, people are like, we call people every week, right? And in government, what I've seen repeatedly happen, and not because even like of any one thing that any one person might be doing, but it is accepted that like, you're just not going to call someone until you figured stuff out. That could be 6 weeks later, they could have already found a job, right? So I think there's less of a priority placed on candidate experience when actually there's such a huge mission pull. There's such a huge carrot for folks, which is this mission piece. And I actually, it's interesting because we do focus a ton. I think it's important to look at money because it does have a hugely differential impact. Candidate experience also does, because if it takes someone 6 months to get a job, which by the way, we have a little bit more control over than how much money they're going to get paid in a lot of cases. But if it takes someone 6 months to get a job and they're having to think about a choice between taking a job in 2 months that's not the perfect job, but they can support their family, 2 months, right? And I can't tell you how many folks I've spoken to have said, yeah, I'm working at, I work at, I may work at a tech company, but I'm taking care of my whole family here. Like I am the one who's taking care of my sister who's in college, and who's taking care of my mom, and who's taking care of this. So it actually makes a difference for me. The finances, sure, but what also makes a difference is, again, if there's uncertainty for 6 to 12 months. And so, but that's the part that we actually can control. So if we can fix that, I'd love us to be thinking in parallel. Yes, let's work on this big vision of fixing salaries. But at the same time, if we don't fix and think about the candidate experience, we will again not we still won't get folks, all of the folks that we want in, who want to be here, right?
Yeah.
And I will just throw out, that's probably true for people inside as well. Just throwing that out.
I had a really good ability to compare what it's like to be recruited for a role in government and what it's like to be recruited for a startup role, which you know, when you think of startups, you don't think like, oh, it's a good analogy to recruiting for government. They're so different. But actually, I found it was much more similar than something like a Google or big tech firm. Why? Some startups often don't pay as much as a big company. The stability isn't there. The startup could fold any second. There's people aren't really doing it. People who like a young, especially if you're thinking about earlier recruits who aren't already like paying a mortgage and supporting a family, but kind of like, okay, I can, any salary is good compared to being a student, right? But hey, I could have like, you know, corporate, you know, top level salary or the best I can do. And then why go to a startup if you could do that? And it is about that whole, I mean, I look at how my CEO was recruiting me, I actually went to government first and then later went back to that startup. It was the constant follow-up, like, let's talk more, let's talk about you, what do you want? It was so much about what growth personally and professionally I will have the opportunity for at that startup versus being, it's so different from going to like a Google where it's like it's going to be a good experience in some ways, but you're not going to be making major changes. Like at a startup, you might change. You have a lot of agency because you're helping chart the course. And I think that because sometimes these technical roles in government are fairly new, you do have that agency. Yes, I know government is this huge entity, but in the place where in the role you land in, you can make a huge impact because you are bringing a new expertise. And there's an excitement about that of like, oh, this is going to really like, I'm going to grow in directions that I wouldn't necessarily grow in a kind of more comfy traditional corporate technology role. And that was very appealing to me. And I was like, yeah, I want to learn in a new direction. So I feel like that's something to lean into. It's not something people think of in government, like what new direction? I don't want to learn about I don't want to become more bureaucratic. Like people have all these negative connotations about what they're going to be told to do. And so instead to change that narrative around the opportunities to have government be different, to be the one who is like setting a new course. And that to me is at certain points in life is more important than maximizing the actual, you know, what's on my W-2 form. Maybe isn't. There's a range. I think what Caitlin said, there's a minimal acceptability, and then there's like, where's my range that if I'm going to trade off, you know, a dollar sign for the life experience.
John, there was another question that came into the chat about security and background requirements in the government and how that has impacted the talent pool and strategies to kind of navigate what those challenges are. So, and I think we had some reacting going on in the chat as well.
On that there too. I see this actually as, I was going to chime in on what Jennifer said, because I see this as a part of it. So I'm going to tie the two together here. You know, I'm a systems engineer. That's the way my head works. And so to me, I look at everything with metrics and numbers and measurements. And to me, when you post a job posting, how much time does it take before you start getting applications? That's about, you know, how well are you posting in places that people can find it? And then how long does it take to actually go through the resumes, look at all the applications and get to the point where you make an offer and someone actually can start? Like the reason you're posting a job is you want someone to start. And that end-to-end time can't be months. Like if it's months, you're going to lose people. People are going to midway through 3 months are like, they're going to go get a job somewhere else. And I've seen this, you know, we're picking on government here because that's what we're doing on this panel here at this conversation. But I've personally seen this in a couple of large multinationals I've worked in, where things just drag on. There's another budget reshuffle or the corporate reorg, and suddenly you're not sure, so everything's on hold. And candidates just either disappear or some desperately hang on for months because they really care about the project until they can't wait any longer. And that is something you have control over. Like that turnaround time is something that every person who's trying to recruit and hire, like reducing that time, it's got to be your first. Like, why is something sitting waiting for an approval? Why is something sitting waiting without being answered? Get on it and get it back. I think that's and you have control over it, like Jennifer was saying. You know, there's other things that are harder to change, but this is in your control. So, and that, yes, maybe security is part of that. Why does the security step say so long? Does this job really need security for all of it, or just for part of it? You know, you can. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying a ton about it in the chat because I think it's not that the security requirements themselves are so onerous. I mean, there was one guy that, you know, when he found out someone was going to look at his taxes, was like, no, I'm out. But you know what? He probably shouldn't have joined government, is all I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it is really not the requirements, right? It's, you know, are there incentives? Most of the time, the people who do security checks, I am so sorry for the noise. The people who do security checks, you know, no one thanks them. I'm just going to put it out there. This is weird. Like, people don't thank them. You just call them to yell at them. There's no incentive for anyone who doesn't security checks to actually go, oh, I'm actually helping with the hiring of this person. Why don't I check and make sure the email's right? Why don't I, right? Like, you know, it's just, and so, I mean, I remember, this never happened, but I remember, I know it's recorded right now. You know, there was a time where it was really hard and security checks were taking a long time. And, you know, but finally, you know, a group of folks decided, like, when something really good happened, and folks were able to move people through security more quickly, just to say thank you and figure out a way to say thank you in a way that meant something to people, and to explain why that security check moving through well in a shorter period of time actually helped with the mission. It's connecting, right? So part of that is just building relationships with HR and with security if one can, because it's also what I've heard a lot is, oh, well, if we cut down on the time for security, that cuts down on quality. That's not actually, that's not the issue, right? The question is, how do we support and incentivize those folks who are doing security to have high quality checks, but also, like, they need carrots too, right? They need to hear why the work that they're doing is so deeply important to all of us, and why if it doesn't happen quickly, it doesn't work. And that's up for all of us to do. And, you know, if we leave nothing from this conversation, go, like, figure out a way to thank your talent and security people so that you can move forward in the future. I'm going on mute.
Yeah, I'll add to, yeah, I'll add to what Jennifer just said. It's like, it's not about reducing the quality of the security process, because we're picking on security here right now. You still want that to be a good, detailed security process. That's what it's there for. But like, is an email sitting in a spam folder and everyone's sitting on one side thinking they sent an email, and on the other side, there's people sitting there going, why didn't they email me? Like, gaps like that happen. And so follow-ups like, hey, I'm not trying to pressure you, but do you have everything you need? Like, looking for those gaps. And that's where it comes back to, where does time go? That also never really happened in real life. Cough, cough. We do have, somehow we're getting close on time. I wanted to talk about a couple of things here. One was about pilot programs, how to start this, where to start, and ideas of experiments you could try. Related to that, this is going to take a while. Any kind of ideas on suggestions that people could have? You know, are there any takeaways that people here could start doing that you'd seen work? Or flip side, anything that you'd say, like, whatever you do, don't do this, you know? Thoughts, preferences? I'm going to put Jennifer last because the background noise for now, and I'll pick on Caitlin instead, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. As the most recent pilot, I guess, on this.
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
I thought about this question in advance, and I wrote down so many things, and I will try to pick just a couple. I think the most important thing for us was building the right stakeholder network. Before we were even trying to do anything, building that investment for the idea, making sure that it was aligned to broader priorities and strategies, either in the administration or within our agency. but also pushing so that all of our stakeholders actually had a stake in our success as well. So it's not just, I'm supporting you verbally, it's, I actually want you to win on this. And this is how, and how I'm also connected to your success. And so kind of sharing the burden of risk helped us get a stronger start overall on Digital Core, which technically is still a pilot. So I'll let you know in a year how that went. I think one other thing I would say is that I think we talk a lot about innovation as like a concept of starting and creating something brand new. And in our pilot, it has meant more thinking about what currently exists and how you can use it differently, or how you can package it differently, or make changes around the edges. I think something Julie mentioned earlier that I was going to say, and I think I'm going to connect these two concepts in my head, but if it doesn't quite get there, bear with me. There is such a difference between a requirement and a preference, or a norm or a practice. And so often when you are doing something that is new or creating a pilot, what you're actually uncovering, at least for us, was the difference between the requirement and what everyone else has been doing to implement the requirement, or how they've interpreted the requirement. And so there's so much space to uncover there that can make a big difference. That doesn't mean you actually have to change a thing. It means that you're just doing something differently with the thing that currently exists, because often they're created for such good reasons. And maybe the implementation or the execution is the thing that needs to be piloted. Okay, the last one that I would say is just, I think there are often small things that you can test very quickly. And so a pilot doesn't have to be this grand big thing. I think choosing some of the things that are going to have the biggest impact but are manageable so that you can test them and learn from them and build off them was really successful for us.
Something you guys have you all have reminded me of when you're talking about preferences versus requirements. So lately we've been writing some role descriptions for openings at my startup. And it's funny because our first pass is the typical, like, what should we be doing? Requirements, and then nice to have or preferences, and we split them out. But then in this document we have big debates, like, really, why can we move this down to preferences if they don't have that? And then we think, oh, I worked with like these other 3 people that would be great for this role, didn't have this requirement. Why is it here? The other thing we've been doing, thanks to one of our designers, she wrote a job description that was so friendly and almost informal. And I don't know if this is possible in government, but I'm noticing more and more startups and companies doing this. They're not doing the formal language. They're like, hey, everybody, this is the kind of people we are. This is kind of what we're looking for. It doesn't mean it's not rigorous. It doesn't mean it's not a difficult process. You need to, you're going to be asked questions that are going to challenge you, but the whole tone is so much, come and be part of this team, come and be part of this exciting mission, come and help us. We want, we're enjoying what we're doing. If you want to join us, that here's a window into us. The tone makes a huge difference. And it's just so surprising. And like, it just kind of sets you off like, oh, it doesn't have to be this formal. Now, I don't know if that's at all possible in government because there are legal reasons that, fun language may be misinterpreted, but I feel like, I don't know, it would be really fascinating to see if that's a liberty that could be taken on the government side.
Awesome. If there's nothing else that you take away from this call, the one thing, and I'm gonna triple down on what Caitlin said, and also something that I said earlier, which is you can do something right now, like figure out what are the pieces that you have control over, whether it be creating a candidate experience that is not gonna scare people away. Right, work on the long-term stuff, but I feel like a lot of the times we focus on, oh my gosh, but we can't do it because this isn't in place or this isn't in place. But actually just don't post and pray, right? Don't post in USA Jobs and hope that everyone comes. Actively recruit, use the Mythbusters assets we just dropped here, right? You can actively recruit people. It is totally legal. And right, know what you can do, and mute I go. But know what you can do. So work on the long term, care about it. But for you and for your sanity, just focus on what you can control, because you can control a lot. that can reduce barriers for people, and also know that you know, there are other folks in government who want to support you on that.
Fair. And I'll say the knowing what's the difference between a rule and a preference, that's probably one of the big takeaways. And yes, try your own pilot right now. Somehow we've got 2 minutes left. We're out of time. So first of all, I want to give everyone, see if we can end on time for everyone. So I'm going to stop here. I'd like to thank Caitlin and Jennifer and Raquel for this great discussion. Thank you all for that. And also for the questions that came in. Also very much thank you for those. That actually really helped as well. So good job, everybody, everyone, literally. There are going to be some other upcoming events, so check out the ACT-IAC.org website. And I would just say thank you for serving and thank you for being here. So on that note, I bid you good day.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.